If you've interacted with Apple's voice assistant Siri or Amazon's Alexa to check the weather, to look for restaurants near you, or to check the latest markets update, then you know what conversational AI is. With natural language processing, NLP, AI chatbots have become equipped to understand the customer's intent, study history of past interactions, and then provide a personalized response to queries. Today, companies across the world are using conversational AI for customer support, engagement, to replicate in-store experience, personalized recommendations, to sell products, services, and so much more. Now, according to Deloitte, the global conversational AI market, which includes chatbots and intelligent virtual assistants, is expected to grow at a compounded annual growth rate of 22% between 2020 and 2025, touching US dollars 14 billion by 2025. Now, how will all of these advances in conversational AI better our lives? How will it impact businesses and jobs? I'm Miloni Bhatt, and my panel of guests here today will give us some insights. First of all, we have with us Ankit Prasad, who is the founder and CEO of Bobble AI. Ankit, welcome.
Thank you, Miloni.
Next, joining us is Raghu Ravinutula, co-founder and CEO of Yellow.AI. Raghu, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Melanie, and great to be here.
We have with us Srini Ananth, Managing Director, Intel Capital. Srini, good to have you with us.
Thank you, Miloni. Great to be here.
And finally, Aayush Jain, Startup and Machine Learning Business Development at AWS. Aayush, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Miloni. Great to be here.
All right, and it's wonderful for us to have you all here with us. Let's just dive right in. Aayush, to you first. When it comes to India, can you give us a sense of the India market on conversational AI, which includes natural language processing, text-to-speech, voice optimization, etc.? You know, what are the scope? What are the challenges?
See, globally, different sources, I just looked up, different sources can give different numbers, but broadly, the global conversational AI market stands at anywhere between $6 to $8 billion. Now, when this question of what is the India market size, it's very tricky to answer that because India is a land where companies are built and exports products globally, right? So from a demand point of view, there is a different market size in India. However, the supply, great examples are sitting here, like, Yellow.AI sells globally, built in India, and they sell globally. So from a sell side perspective, there are a lot of Indian startups building in India and selling to the West, English-speaking markets, Spanish-speaking markets, and so on and so forth, as well as to the domestic market. So that is a very important nuance that we have to look at, that the demand market in India and the supply market in India may not be aligned because India supplies to the world, right? So I don't have a number to put on it, but I just want to call out a few themes in conversational AI. One that I already called out, I mean, it's a land of exporting products globally. Typically we work with a lot of AI, especially conversational AI companies. Yellow is our customer, and many others, right? Observe.ai, Sketch.ai, some of them I cannot name, but most of them are working with markets in the US and Western Europe, which are primarily English-speaking markets, because there is a lot of opportunity, right? So that's number one nuance that I want to highlight. The number two nuance that I want to highlight, when we talk about the Indian market per se, India is blessed with highly vernacularly diverse languages. There are many dialects, but primarily there are a lot of languages in India. it may be called a challenge, but the way I see it, and the way we see it at Amazon is anything that is a challenge is an opportunity for entrepreneurs, right? So anything that calls for a challenge, it also calls for a big opportunity to solve for Indian vernacular language support, right? So that's number two that I want to really call out here. And when we talk about the scope of conversational AI, I also want to call out that it needs to be bifurcated into two parts. One is voice. See, conversational AI is inevitably going to take up a large percentage of human interactions, driven by, because we are interacting on digital platforms. Also, COVID-19 only provided tailwinds and expedited the adoption of conversational AI because of social distancing and all of that. So as humans are adopting more and more digital platforms to converse or communicate, the conversational AI is only going to go up. Now, conversational AI can be done in two ways. One is voice, we talk, or one is text, we type. And very interestingly, one more way of conversational AI, Bobble is sitting, Ankit is sitting here, and we work with them very closely, is through images and emojis and interesting forms of mix of those. So people also communicate with those. So you have to understand, break down the whole conversational AI into voice AI, text AI, which can be chatbots, virtual assistants, as well as emojis and images. And different nuances apply to all these three sub verticals that I called out in conversational AI. Voice poses a challenge. You also asked about challenges. Of course, when somebody wants to solve for Indian languages, be it Tamil, Telugu, Marathi, they need to train those voice models, right? And that, for startups, that incurs a cost. So cost can be sometimes a challenge for AI first companies. Of course, Amazon and AWS work very closely with startups to reduce those. We, in terms of providing compute, low cost compute instances that we've launched. The second challenge that I want to also talk about is talent. I was reading some reports. I may not want to quote any number, but I was reading some reports that India still has huge demand-supply gap of data scientists, data engineers, and AI experts. So these are some of the key challenges that I see in the whole space, and these are my few thoughts on how to look at the market. Overall, break down the market between voice, text, and images. Indian market is not just Indian enterprises. Indian startups are selling to the globe, and the vernacularly diverse aspect that I talked about.
Okay. Anyone else wants to contribute to this? Srini, you have anything to add?
I think Aayush has highlighted a couple of those opportunities and challenges. This is definitely on my wish list is this real-time translation, right? This involves a lot of things that are, for example, you need very low latency turnaround of voice. We talk about Indian languages being diverse, but also the translation between languages, it also depends on training those models. And if you think about what is the corpus of data of recorded voice and how do you train them easily? I think in US, there's been a trend to these larger and larger models, which favor the large corporations. So if you start thinking about how many different languages and dialects and can you train them, but ultimately, I think that would be the goal, that if you can enable these real-time translation among Indian languages, major Indian languages, and even provide them on a mobile device, that opens up the door to so many more applications. So I would just add that that is definitely the big opportunity. All the ones that he's mentioned, whether it's the text and images and chatbots, have been around in the enterprise for a few years, are only getting better. So right. I think there's the long-term goal of getting to real-time translation, which on a phone is actually not easy. You can do it in the cloud today, but the other thing is where can you use this, whether it's in healthcare or government, and we can talk about that.
Okay. Ankit, I want to come to you. See, everyone's mentioned this whole thing about data sets, right? For AI to work efficiently in a fair, unbiased manner, you need to receive data sets which are of good quality, maybe have the width and the depth. What are some of the challenges currently when it comes to NLP and data processing? And, how do you see organizations building AI tools to ensure that they're maintaining data standards.
Right. Yes. Before I come to data set, I would like to make a couple of comments on the previous discussion point. I think Aayush has rightly highlighted that today India is becoming the export hub of conversational AI technologies, right? But having said that, the onus to bring Indian consumers up to speed also lies with the Indian entrepreneurs, right? How do we make it so seamless so that their expectations, which is in terms of personalized human-like approach, right, with human touch and emotions, can be matched with the technology that we are building, right? Because we are very used to such personalized servicing, which typically lacks as a matter of consumer behavior in the West, right? And therefore, probably for them, uh, adopting to bot ecosystem might have lesser friction compared to what we have seen in India. Yes, in order to manage those expectations, we need to build robust technologies, and such technologies can only be created with high quality data set, right? The challenge today, rightly pointed out by Ayush, is that such data set in regional languages um, is very scarce. It's very rare to find such data sets, and even if you can find it, it's limited in quantity as well as quality. Therefore, I believe most of the AI companies, conversational AI companies in India today, have at some point or the other decided to actually go ahead with creating your own data set, right? At Bobble, because we felt that while there are so many other companies working on the end product and are working on creating bots, uh, I think there was a merit in our decision to focus our approach on building the fundamental blocks which would help in creating the desired outcome, right? And for those reasons, we heavily invested into research and development. We invested into creating communities of users in regional languages, and not just languages, but also regional dialects, who can contribute to the development by small things like data annotation, right? And I think it has worked really well for us so far, so good. Be it the community of college students, school students, or be it the community created by under the banner of an NGO. Uh, all of them have been contributing significantly to the data set that we initially generated. But by the virtue of the category we are in, having a consumer facing product, which is a smartphone keyboard, the advantage, or I would rather say, the unfair advantage that Bobble has is because of its 83 million plus users, who are using our keyboard actively on their smartphones. We are able to gather a lot of new data sets. We are able to understand consumer behavior um, at different points in time for different scenarios, right? How are they talking on, say, LinkedIn versus how are they talking on Instagram with their friends versus how are they talking on their family group on WhatsApp, right? uh, there are so many factors that contributes to consumer behavior, and because of this large user base and the ability to gather data, data which is in depth and which is exhaustive sort of data, right? Even if somebody is talking to a chat bot, or even if somebody is sending a voice note, it most of it passes through the keyboard channel, right? And therefore, by analyzing this data, we are in a very good position to help other companies, right? And that's what we are doing right now. We are helping the conversational AI companies which are serving the end clients. We are the backend for them through our language technologies and content technologies. through our understanding of the consumers, through our technologies which could have been only created by us because nobody else has access to that data, right? And we sincerely believe in making it more democratic, and therefore very soon we would be contributing further to the ecosystem by creating an open source stack of the data that Bobble AI possess, so that more innovation can flow in, right? And more value can be extracted from that data.
All right. That's great. But, you spoke about some of the insights that you say you have because you have the keyboard and the interaction is through the keyboard. Can you give us a sense of how the Indian user has adapted to conversational AI? What are the insights, something that you could share with us, especially because of so many languages, so many dialects, uh, uh, are there any differences that you find?
Yeah, so one of the internal insight which was not so surprising for us was that our user base adoption of different languages was in sync with the census, India census, right? So the kind of distribution that languages have in India, we saw similar kind of user distribution within our user base, right? But when it comes to text versus voice versus image, we are seeing that the usage of textual conversation is not growing with that speed versus the usage of voice-based inputs, right?
That's interesting.
For example, 2 years ago, 6% of Bobble's daily active users were using the voice input functionality, which has now increased. And I'm talking by 2 years ago, I mean just before COVID. And today we see almost 16 to 18%, almost 3x jump in the voice input usage, right? That was an eye opener for us, that maybe this behavior could be very specific to Indian audience. I am not sure about the global usage patterns, but it is what it is, right? Indian users are moving towards voice, and Indian users are moving towards visual formats of expression. We have seen the popularity of emojis, stickers, GIFs, and memes growing day by day and surprising even our own expectations, right? People prefer to have those visual elements of expression within their conversations, right? No matter whether it's a peer-to-peer conversation or customer to business conversations, right? Or customer to machine conversations. Even then, even there, people um, uh, prefer to use things which can help them express their emotions better, right? And I think these are some of the insights
That's
which
very,
have
very
led
interesting.
yeah, which have led to some of our business offerings as well.
Okay, anyone who wants to add? I mean, the fact that you might be talking to a machine at the other end still does not stop people from putting in smileys or frowns or things like that. I mean, that's essentially what you're saying, right, Ankit?
Yes, correct.
All right.
Users' expectation is that that machine should understand this visual vocabulary, right? This is the new language of millennials and Gen Zs, and bots must understand that vocabulary.
Okay. Raghu, to you next. How is conversational commerce or conversational AI triggering the shift in consumer behavior? Particularly when it comes to consumer journey from awareness to transaction and beyond, kind of sort of changing the game of commerce itself.
Yeah. So if you see in a country like India and in most of the emerging markets, there isn't a single application potentially as popular as WhatsApp out there. If you see any mobile app or website, the audience have been limited, which in sense indicates that a large section of the population has been kept away from all the improvements and advancements in commerce that have been available that have potentially not been available in a format that they are convenient and used to. And I think the way conversational AI has kind of, you can use the word democratized commerce, is made available the entire commerce segment available on applications that are available on everybody's phone. I mean, shopping and buying on WhatsApp, shopping and buying over voice on telephony, things like that. So we have seen that one for end consumers, it has expanded the market from 30, 40 million end consumers that brands can go target their digital commerce with, to almost close to 400 to 500 million, because now these are available on WhatsApp and telephony, etc. And from a brand's perspective, it's a huge increase in their total addressable market, especially once they are able to enable the shopping on messaging and shopping on voice across multiple languages for end users. Some of the key examples have been, let's say, BPCL, one of our largest customers. They are enabling commerce on WhatsApp in multilingual, seen a tremendous adoption across users beyond their captive base on mobile apps and websites. We've seen even much larger brands like Sephora have enabled this messaging, which is a combination of machine interacting with users and proposing products and solutions, but also enabling beauty assistants to connect on demand when the user has deeper questions or need support and assistance around buying. Again, increasing the entire market size for the brand and also enhancing the customer experience. So in summary, conversational AI expanded the total addressable market for brands. Second, enabled a broader customer base and enabled commerce to a customer base that never has experienced it. Third, it has also expanded to a customer base that has always faced difficulty accessing mobile apps, or there's a literacy problem, and enabling them to buy over voice as well. So has been an absolutely game changer.
All right. Srini, I want to bring you in at this point. So it's obviously changed consumer behavior, right? And COVID has played a role in accelerating digitization, especially in India, and pushed this adoption of AI. How do you see AI ML transforming organizational structures, over the next couple of years?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I mean, obviously, Raghu is pointing out all of the use cases within enterprise. At least it's starting with customer service. So customer service, or CX, is a huge part of the cost for any service company, commerce company. Those sort of cost structures definitely change. What percentage of people do you have sitting offshore in call centers, right? I think call centers are being completely transformed. A few years back, we had a startup we invested in called Bobble Labs that was working on speech and noise removal, and now that has become sort of core for everyone. Now everyone has speech and noise removal, and so if you think about a contact in a call center, one of the biggest things is hearing conversations from other people come on your call. So that has been resolved. So now you think about it, how much of it can be automated, and how much of your tier 1 and maybe tier 2 level of customer service be automated. And so that is something that we are starting to see. The second thing is, if you start thinking about even interactions in healthcare industry, for example, like one of the biggest, for many years we've been looking at this, the biggest issue is just the healthcare and record system in the US is not very easy, but I would think in India it's still unorganized and sort of disorganized. So how do you transcribe the conversations that are happening with the doctor? Because maintaining electronic health records and EMR medical records is one of those things. If you can digitize, you can track, and if you can track, you can provide a better delivery. So I think healthcare is one of those industries which can definitely use conversational voice. We have platforms already available, but I don't think I would say the hospital and sort of medical systems in India are as organized. But if you start thinking about solutions that can be applied, in transcription, in talking to, or even providing base level medical advice. Like if you have a helpline and you can ask some basic questions, which will prevent you from having to go and make a visit, right? And so those sort of things, telediagnosis and others, a lot of those can depend on conversational AI. And I would say healthcare is, I mean, we've already seen education changing, all the tech having an impact, but I would think healthcare and healthcare delivery being the next big industry that can really transform if you have much better conversational AI.
Okay. Aayush, what are some of the AI NLP solutions that AWS provides? According to reports, we are currently in what is being referred to as the stage of artificial narrow intelligence, and we'll move into the stage of artificial general intelligence over the next decade. Could you shed some light on this?
Sure. So AWS has, offers the broadest and the deepest set of services, and this holds true also for our machine learning and AI suite of services. Within the ML stack that we have a group of language services wherein we offer, we have Amazon Lex, which is a chatbot platform that we have. We have we have Amazon Textract, Amazon Comprehend, and Amazon Translate, which which assesses and identifies documents, scan documents, or anything, images, etc. So which Srini just talked about, right? Which helps in converting medical records, etc. In fact, just to give you an example of talking of Amazon Textract, IHX, healthcare document classifier and codifier uses Amazon Textract along with our ML platform to analyze all the medical records and expedite the insurance claim process for patients. Also, all of that data goes into drug classification and more analysis and so on and so forth, and sort of in the entire value chain of medical records. The third category of services that we offer include voice related services, exactly what I talked about in the start. One is Amazon Poly. That is a text-to-speech service that we offer. So any textual text it can read out. In fact, very interestingly, approximately 20 days back, we had an announcement and we have launched Kajal, which is the Poly's bilingual variant, and Kajal is enabled to read any text in English as well as in Hindi. So Kajal is the new product. The Poly Hindi and English bilingual Poly avatar that we have launched on 22nd July. So that's a very big launch for us because we're talking of vernacular market. And lastly, we have a service called we have Transcribe, which is a text speech to text engine, which I think also Raghu and Srini talked about. So again, being in a vernacularly diverse country, converting speech to text can be a challenge. So Transcribe currently supports 4 Indian languages, and just to give an example, Prime Focus Technologies, which is one of the leading media house working in media post-production and supply chain, uses Amazon Transcribe to reduce cost as well as optimize their workflows. So these are some of the gamut of services that we offer in voice, in text, and image classification, as well as in the chatbot space. Coming to your larger question, which is a very interesting question. The ANI versus AGI, artificial narrow intelligence and artificial general intelligence. AGI is, I'm no expert, I'm not a researcher, but so I think a lot of labs and researchers globally are working on really live human-like behavior of AGI. And this is my personal opinion, that we don't even know the potential of AGI, and I'm not sure whether I'm for it, against it, or neutral to it. So I would, AGI, and I can also safely say on, what I feel personally is that it's a distant dream right now. AGI is a distant dream. We don't even know the pros and cons of AGI, the capabilities, the challenges. And researchers are working. A lot of labs are working. We have our annual event called REMARS, which is machine learning, robotics, automation, and space technology. We did have a lot of humanoid robots being displayed there, and for different use cases. But pivoting to ANI, Miloni, we, especially coming from an emerging market country, we live in a land where there are foundational sectors that need democratization and upliftment, right? And a lot of these artificial narrow intelligence capabilities is the need of the hour. They are the business use cases that we really need today. Talk of India has 1.3 billion people. uh, Financial inclusion is a foundational sector where ANI helps, right? I mean, we work with companies like Kisht and UB that run all their credit assessment models on Amazon SageMaker, which is the machine learning platform, and train all their models end to end, train, tune, deploy all their machine learning models for credit assessment, fraud detection, using Amazon ML platform. And they have been able to, these startups have been able to make financial access for the underserved possible in days or minutes, even minutes and hours, right? With so financial inclusion stands to be one core fundamental sector that I feel that ANI is solving for that. I mean, talking of Kist again, I mean, with their leveraging our machine learning platform, they've been able to reduce their NPAs by 70%, 75%, and increase their approval rate by 15%. Talking of the next foundational sector that I really believe that ANI is really impacting right now, and what is the need of the hour, is food and agri for all. We are an agrarian country. To give some perspective, we work with a company called Intel Labs that is actually using Amazon Recognition, which is our image computer vision service, to classify bad quality fruits, bad quality vegetables with good quality. And it made the whole reducing cost, because these are all perishable items, right? So reducing cost and thereby the entire food and agri supply chain. So another real foundational sector is education for all, right? Again, online proctoring. We all just came out, hopefully, from the COVID-19 pandemic. The whole education industry turned virtual. People were taking exams virtually. Kids, and students were taking exams virtually. So that called for a use case of online proctoring, online assessment, interviewing. What is the sentiment analysis on the face? How is the person talking? Is he stressed? Is he or she is stressed or nervous, etc., etc. In fact, the company in Pune called V Shine Tech, they got this. They came to us with that problem, and within a week they had online proctoring solution ready using Amazon Recognition and Amazon SageMaker. So we enabled within a week. Another foundational sector where we could really impact in education. And lastly, I would say healthcare. What Srini touched upon, and I gave the example of IHX already. We worked with IHX to do document classification using TextRack and Amazon SageMaker. So if we are able to transform all the medical records, imagine what democratization of healthcare can happen. So my point being, Miloni, while AGI potentially can be amazing, I don't know the answer to that.
Let's focus on the narrow
ANI.
intelligence.
Yes, and right now that is the need of the hour, and we need to solve for some foundational problems that we have.
Yeah. Okay. Raghu, Yellow.AI is described as not just another chatbot. Our dynamic AI agents automate every interaction with your customers and employees to deliver actionable outcomes. Now, past experience has shown that very poorly designed assistants cause a lot of frustrations among customers, among employees. How did you solve for this?
Great question. I think the company and the platform is kind of built around few fundamentals. One, I think the virtual assistants and chatbots need to have a more complete content from the end customer or use case perspective. What I mean by that is, as you can imagine, you cannot have Siri answer just 10 questions with the same intent, that will lead to frustration. So one of the key element of the platform has been that how can we get to a much larger share of enterprise content to be available on the virtual assistants, which means that not only are you dealing with structured APIs or integration to the core systems, but ability to handle unstructured data. Large part of the enterprise content is available in PDF documents and unstructured data. So having a large coverage of the enterprise content through ability to ingest unstructured content has been one of the key pillars. The second pillar is about focusing on not just automating the conversation, which is a part of the conversational AI, but a lot of conversations arise in workflows that need to be completed for the end customer or employee. Imagine somebody wanting to reschedule a flight ticket. The conversation could be automated where the inputs could be taken and a ticket be raised, and later a human come and actually reschedule the flight, versus the virtual assistant have the ability to orchestrate workflows around the core systems to drive not only the automation of the conversation, but also the workflows that are arising through that. We have seen a tremendous uplift in customer satisfaction rates when there has been an autonomous resolution of customer requests and not just automation of conversations. The third key pillar has been the philosophy that AI alone cannot solve all problems. There is a human touch needed, especially when there is a lot of empathy required for the customer. So how can we integrate the customer and AI, the human and AI element in serving the customers seamlessly without friction, so that there is an easy transfer and the customer experience is best in all the cases. When there is empathy required, when there is speed of transaction required, AI is used. When there is empathy needed, this human comes in place. So I think that provides completeness of experience. Okay. And the last, there's one last pillar, which is there is the data set is very diverse. People continue to kind of interact in different ways. So the ability of dynamically training the models based on customer interactions that are happening on the platform and do that in real time helps us understand more and more of different types of customer utterances and conversations. I think this helps provide a more complete experience and actually providing a better service than just humans interacting with end consumers.
How does this work, Raghu? I mean, how do you dynamically decide that, a human interaction is required at this particular point and, the AI assistant needs to take a step backwards?
This is primarily based on the sentiment analysis. To give the extent on the same example, let's say somebody is asking to reschedule flight tickets. They are looking at speed in which they can do it. So machine is the best way to handle it. Let's say that similar conversation is extending to their worry about COVID protocols, which they want to be sure about. That empathy around their concern is best provided by humans. So that is detected by the virtual agent that this is a query that needs the signals as empathy that is needed for the customer, because it's a cause of concern that they are raising a question or interaction about, and it transfers to the human agent that can provide the answer back. So it's essentially around detecting the sentiment of the conversation and determining whether that resolution or interaction needs to be handled by a machine or human.
So essentially, AI and humans work side by side in this perfect scenario.
Absolutely, 100%.
Okay. All right, Ankit. Bobble AI has a keyboard that supports 130 languages, including Indic languages, and your site says that 20 million people are using this keyboard at any time, and you use this data to provide insights for brands, who could get it to use it to target customers. How can brands incorporate conversational AI and yet retain that personal touch in the customer experience? When it comes to customer experience, what do you think are some of the key areas perhaps that conversational AI needs to focus on?
Yeah. Yes, Miloni. So I believe even when brands are aware about the static user profile or customer profile, right? They are aware about their customers because of the first party data that they have collected from various sources. But what they are not aware about is the real time intent and mood of that customer, right? So I think one of the lacking or lagging scenario in this space is brands are still waiting for the customers to come to them, right? For to ask for a support or to make up a new booking or make a new purchase, etc. They're waiting for the customers to come to them passively. We were thinking, how do we make it more proactive approach and enable brands to actually get access to real-time intent and mood of the person via, again, the keyboard data collection that happens, and within the GDPR compliance and regulatory limits, how can we transfer this intent or broadcast this intent to the brands or service providers sitting on the device so that they capture the intent and proactively provide support or capture that opportunity into transaction, right? So I think while on one side we're thinking of conversational AI as more sort of a bot ecosystem, but on the other side, conversational AI is also analyzing conversations to come up with meaningful information, right? That can be further used for to serve various use cases. One of the use cases I just mentioned, right? For brands, I think it is on the other side, while they are interfacing the customers, I think it is important for them to infuse a personality into their interface, which could be a bot in this case, right? Say, for example, currently a BFSI bot that is providing the BFSI related services versus a health and wellness bot, they all behave exactly the same. There is absolutely no difference between a BFSI bot conversation and health and wellness bot conversation, the way it is structured and the way it is presented. I think this leads to no brand recall value, right? So brands need to infuse some personality into the bot, and they need to probably extend that customer service into conversational commerce, right? To generate more value from that conversation, right? So conversion of or rather say converting a moment of frustration which typically customers come up with while interacting with the bot into moments of delight is going to change the game for brands, right? And they can do that simply by introducing personalized content, or by ensuring that their interface is able to make intelligent recommendations at the right time to that customer, right, when they actually need it the most. And they need to speak in the lingo that their target group is habituated with, right? So I have never come across a bot which calls me a bro, right? I have never come across a bot that literally sends me a sticker of namaste, right? Or a bot which sends me when I'm leaving the chat, it sends me a gif, "Tussi ja rahe ho," apna kabhi khushi kabhi gum ka famous dialogue, right? So these are things that will bring that moment of delight for the customers. These are the things which will create that connection, build that brand connection, where I think brands need to think and invest more actively to bridge the communication gap with the new age customers, the millennials and the Gen Zs, right? Um, Yeah, on the data front, I feel that you know, understanding not just the customer intent but also sentiment, right? This is, I'm sure there are various work that has already been done on this front. Yet I feel brands are still unaware of how do we use that sentiment for better conversion or for the business benefit, right? So the strategies need to be taking into account all of these various nuances of conversational insights that they gather in order to create a more meaningful experience for the end customers, and that will lead to higher ROI, right? So user personalization, infusion of rich media content in conversations, um, I think these are some of the things that brands can think about.
All right, so it's really an open space right now, a lot of experimentation happening. A lot of things brands are not aware, but hopefully, an ecosystem is being created where all of these things, will build up to having really great interactions with either chatbots or with voice assistants. Uh, Srini, I want to ask you, about the investment in AI-based startups. There's a tremendous interest in AI and ML. Any particular segments that you're particularly bullish about when it comes to NLP, AI, ML?
Uh, Definitely. I think we've seen the evolution over the last few years. So we've always been investing in speech and AI. And if you go back 7, 8 years, it was more traditional, ASR and NLP and TTS and models that were based more on older algorithms. And then you've had this movement to replacing every one of those segments in the voice processing with AI and neural networks. I think what we are seeing now, at least for the past 2, 3 years, we have Google came out with this thing called a transformers architecture, and that has helped the training of a lot of large language models. And so there are a number of startups that are using large language models or building and training their own large language models. And what we have seen and what we have found is large language models are good for a couple of things, right? They are very good at text generation. There is OpenAI came up with something called GPT-3, which can very quickly give you a lot of text that can be used by, for example, a startup called Copy.ai. Uses this to automatically generate copy text for websites, blogs, and others. So that is one of the areas, large language models, and startups either training their own large language models, or we'll probably see the next set of startups building on top of LLMs as the base layer. Just like NLP was the base layer, it's already getting infused in enterprises, it's already getting infused in a lot of startups. I think large language models is going to be starting to get incorporated. Our most recent investment was in a company that is building, AI virtual agents, but for gaming and for metaverse and virtual reality use cases. But the idea being that if you can give more of a knowledge base and more intelligence to a virtual agent, where in a game or in some sort of a virtual setting, you can have longer interactions. So today, if you go into a game, a non-playing character, or they call NPCs, they don't say much. They have a script, they answer a couple of questions, they send you on their way. But what if these agents can have a conversation? What if you can quickly whip up a bot or an agent that can conduct an interview? For example, you are in a virtual setting, you have a booth, you don't have a person to man the booth. So you can create an agent that can actually conduct an interview or maybe take you through the company's products. And so we are definitely bullish on segments that will be powered by this next wave of large language models. I think one of the other areas is it's probably a little bit of NLP, but and as well as broader AI is just knowledge queries or asking questions in natural language and being able to get answers. Today, the databases of the world are very much structured or unstructured, and you go in and you have to use a language or some format to retrieve that knowledge. But if you look at enterprise search, I still can't go to my company's intranet portal and ask a question and get the answer that I want. I think Raghu highlighted that there are a lot of integrations inside that aren't done sometimes. Enterprise search is still not a solved problem. But what if you could ask a simple question like, what is my last quarter's results in this particular segment? or what were the 10 patents that were filed last year in this particular segment. And those kind of problems are definitely not yet solved. So startups that I think we will start to see more and more investment going into startups that use these large language models, and eventually find a way to make it small enough that you could have on your device, right? That eventually everything has to become small enough to be able to be used on an endpoint, because we don't want all of this knowledge and everything to rest only in the cloud.
Right. Okay, the entire flow of the conversation, everything's been very interesting. The points that all of you have made. But I want to go back and circle back to something that Aayush said. This whole point about availability of skilled talent when it comes to advancing projects. What are your thoughts on it? How much or how big of a challenge is this? And how do we sort of prepare for it? Anybody who wants to jump in?
Yeah, I can sort of take a swing at it. I would say one thing that separates maybe this generation, you obviously need talent who understand voice and speech, but it's not the same as it was, a few years back. A few years back, you needed sort of speech linguists, and you needed people with very specific domain language to be able to do translation and things like that. Now it is more of a broad-based AI skills, machine learning. Not just building and training these models, but understanding how to deploy these models and how to make it accessible to someone at the business side, right? So you've got data scientists, that is becoming a big area, and I already start to see data science as a major starting to appear. But if you go to the next level, how do you take something that has been built by the data scientist, then how do you deploy it in a larger cloud setting? And that is more of your front-end and back-end engineering. I think that is broad computer skills, computer engineering skills. And then finally, how do you translate that in that business application sense? People who can take some requirements and say, this is our solution and this can be used. So all of these are something that can be learned and trained. And this doesn't require, this is not, you don't need the PhD in a specific speech or natural language area to be able to do this. So, but you do need more specific AI and machine learning courses. And this is one area that doesn't stop, right? It continuously keeps evolving. So I don't think there's a degree program or a particular major alone that can solve. This is basically continuous education and jobs and sort of MOOCs like Coursera and Udemy do a good job of this. But it's almost like you have to keep yourself refreshed. But that is something that can be done because the knowledge is available in a much more democratic fashion, right? You don't have to pay thousands of dollars to take a course in AI and deep learning anymore. It is available at your fingertips.
Yeah, I can probably spend a minute on this question. At Bobble AI, we follow the strategy of creating a right balance between buy, build, and borrow. So when it comes to buying an already ready-made talent, in India, it's very difficult to find at an affordable cost. So we followed the strategy of finding that talent in the university in the form of professors, right? How can we incentivize and motivate professors to come to the corporate world? And that's how we hired two of our AI leads from the universities, right? In terms of build strategy, we look at freshers who are really passionate about AI and ML, or data scientists who wants to switch their career to AI and ML, right, and train them to make them prepared for the future. And when it comes to borrow, it is pretty an open world wherein you can actually find a talent in US or Europe or anywhere else, China, Ukraine, I don't know. I mean, there's talent everywhere, and you can borrow them for certain specific projects or certain specific skills which is missing in your existing team, right? So, the right balance between buy, build, and borrow can actually help solve the problem instead of just looking to hire talent.
All right, I think that's really interesting. Raghu, any insights from your side? Do you follow this buy, build, and borrow model?
So I think I'll it's interesting on how we kind of look at it. We kind of look at it as a way in which I think that every person in the company needs to be aware of how AI is used, in a sense that we don't think AI is a specific skill. I think it's a way of thinking, of solving problems. Because we are all trained in the regular code-based way of solving problems, which is pretty much rule-based. So if you do that, this happens. And a lot of problem solving around AI is about how you architect the data and decision making so that the systems are dynamic and learn by themselves. That's a very, very big shift in how a company or different functions of the company need to think about architecting every single piece of solution that they are putting on in their platforms, right? So what I think is important is, while we can have a small set of people who are the researchers in the company, but pretty much everyone in the company need to be trained in thinking around how to solve problems with a mindset that is not rule-based, but is potentially a dynamically adaptive applications, which are AI-driven applications, which is, I feel, a biggest impediment in general in fully leveraging AI in general. So I think a lot of learning programs, a lot of training programs, even within the company, is absolutely crucial, and it's important that everyone is broadly trained on this skill or way of thinking.
All right, it's interesting. I mean, both of you have, your own processes when it comes to talent, and we wish you all great success with everything that you guys undertake. Ankit of Bobble AI, Raghu, founder CEO of Yellow.AI, Srini Ananth, Managing Director, Intel Capital, and Aayush Jain, Startup and Machine Learning Business Development at AWS. Thank you so very much for your thoughts and for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.